This week, 24 black students were accepted into the University of Toronto's medical school program. That's the largest group ever in Canadian history. We are so glad to have one of those 24 future doctors on the show this morning, Fatimah Roble. Thank you very much, Fatimah, for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Roger.
What does this mean when we hear that number? How important is it to hear that 24 black students have been accepted?
It's very important. It means things are certainly changing within the field of medicine at the University of Toronto, and things are changing within the state of, I would say, education within Ontario. Typically, when we think about the trajectory of black students, they are facing a lot of racism and barriers to further education. So for 24 students to be accepted and to become future doctors, this is a really big deal.
And what does this tell us? Does this tell us that changes in the education system are working? Are we seeing that they're getting the opportunities to move into university and go on to medical school and places like that?
I think it is more reflective of the advocacy efforts at the University of Toronto. So they have a number of different programs, like starting from high school, which introduce Black and Indigenous students to the field of medicine, and that's the summer mentorship program. And they have a support initiative for once students are in university, how can they one day join a health profession like medical school or research or something along those lines. So the advocacy efforts have been coming from the University of Toronto, and I've seen far less efforts from, I would say, the Ontario school systems in general.
And what about yourself? What guided you towards this future career?
So I was 16 years old, and I participated in the summer mentorship program at the University of Toronto. And in this program, I got some really great exposure to the field of medicine and other health professions. I shadowed health professionals for the very first time in my life, and they motivated me to continue to pursue education. And they taught me that I was talented and I really did have a future in this profession. And that was my first exposure. I would say they continued to support me as I went on to further education in university, and they helped me find job opportunities in the future. They looked over my resume, things like that. They looked over my application. They helped me afford the MCAT exam, which is a very expensive standardized test that students have to write before medical school. So they gave me a lot of different support on my journey.
Those mentorships are so important. I was looking, the U of T's valedictorian this year told the story about how she was the only black student in her class of 259, and many patients wondered if she was even a doctor.
259. I stood as the sole black student. And despite taking immense pride in being a woman of color in a space where we are often unseen, I could not have imagined the extent to which my identity and story would be the driving force of my advocacy and the platform upon which I strove for change. One of my earliest defining moments was a few years before I started medical school, when a border officer accused me of lying about having aspirations of becoming a physician. His word stayed with me for years, as I faced invalidations about my experience as a woman of color in medicine.
When you hear that, do you feel things are changing from when she first became a doctor?
That the only black person in the space was also training.
Certainly. Now there are 24 incoming students at the University of Toronto, and I have been a part of a conference at the University of Toronto this past year where they talked about experiences of, Black, Indigenous students, minorities in medicine, and how we can all be allies to these people. And I was surprised to see there were so many other members of the community inside that conference, learning and seeing how they could advocate if they do see someone's experience being invalidated, how they can speak up and support that person.
Fatimah, thank you very much for joining us. All the best with your studies, and I know we'll see you hanging up your shingle very, very soon. Thank you again for joining us this morning, and congratulations.
Thank you, Roger.